There is a self that exists in the eyes of others, a self built from expectations, from old photographs, from the echoes of words you once said and can never unsay. And then there is the self beneath that self, the one that watches and waits and whispers. It speaks in the language of longing, a single recurring question: what if I could shed this skin? This is not a question of geography, of new cities or new names. It is an internal migration, a quiet, relentless yearning to step out of the narrative you have been living and become the author of your own. This is the archaeology of the soul, the delicate, dangerous, and beautiful art of how to disappear and, in the vanishing, to truly become. It begins not with a crisis, but with a quietness, a silence that grows in the spaces between the noise of a life. You are in a room full of people, your laughter timed perfectly to the rhythm of the conversation, and in that very same moment you are also somewhere else entirely, a spectator, watching yourself from a gentle, unbridgeable distance. This is the whisper. It is the faint, persistent signal of the unlived life. It does not shout, it does not demand. It simply appears unbidden in the stillness of an evening as you stare out a window at the fading light. It is the subtle dissonance you feel when you state your own name, as if referring to a character in a book you are still reading. There's a life you are living, the one with the job, the relationships, the routines, the history, and then there is this other phantom life, the one that runs parallel just beneath the surface of your days, the one that holds the person you might have been, the words you might have said, the risks you never took. The German poet Rainer Maria Rilke wrote, "The only journey is the one within." This whisper is the first step on that journey. It is the internal compass recalibrating. For a long time, perhaps for years, the external world provided the map. Follow this path. Achieve these goals, uphold these roles, the son, the mother, the professional, the reliable one, the strong one, and for a time it worked. The map was clear and the territory seemed familiar. But then the landscape of the soul begins to shift. The coordinates no longer align. Achievements feel like items on a list compiled by someone else. The compliments land on skin that has grown strangely numb. This is not ingratitude. It is not a failure of success. It is the far more profound and unsettling success of a deeper, internal intelligence. The self, the truer, more essential self, is beginning to reject the borrowed narrative. It is initiating a quiet coup against the regime of the inauthentic. Psychologically, this can be understood as a rift between the persona and the self. The persona, a term Carl Jung gave to the mask we wear in society, is necessary. It is the interface that allows us to function, to cooperate, to belong. But when the mask begins to fuse to the skin, when it is worn for so long that it is mistaken for the face itself, the soul begins to suffocate. The whisper is the first gasp for air. It is the self reminding the person that they are more and other than the role they play. You might notice it as a peculiar fatigue that sleep does not cure, a sense of being profoundly spiritually tired. It's the exhaustion of a performance that has run for too many seasons. The lines have been memorized so thoroughly they are delivered without thought, without feeling. The actor longs to leave the stage, to step out of the lights and simply be in the dark, quiet anonymity of their own skin. Or you might feel it as a vague, pervasive nostalgia for a place you have never visited, time you have never known. It is a homesickness for a home that does not yet exist, except as a blueprint in your deepest imagination. This longing is not for the past, but for a potential future. It is the soul's memory of its own possibility. The world often misinterprets this whisper. It calls it a midlife crisis, burnout, restlessness. It pathologizes the urge to disappear as a form of escapism. But this is not about running from something. It is about being called towards something. It is a gravitational pull towards a more coherent center, a longing to bring the outer life into alignment with the inner truth. To feel this whisper is not a failure. It is a sign of health. It is the immune system of the spirit identifying a foreign body, a life built on the dreams, expectations, and definitions of others, and beginning the delicate, necessary work of rejection. It is the First faint tremor of an internal earthquake that will, in time, reshape the entire world. It is the quiet, courageous beginning of the desire to disappear, not from the world, but from the version of yourself that no longer fits the vast, unfolding truth of who you are. Before one can disappear, one must first understand the shape of what stands in the light. The persona is not formed in a vacuum. It is a complex, intricate structure built brick by brick from the very first moments of consciousness, a fortress designed for a single purpose: to ensure survival in a world of others. Its blueprint is drawn with the hands of those who raise you. A father's approving nod becomes a cornerstone, a mother's worried frown, a load-bearing wall. You are so strong, they say to a child who does not cry, and a pillar is erected. Why can't you be more like your sister? And a new room is hastily constructed, one dedicated to competition or perhaps to shame. These are not merely comments, they are architectural directives. The child, an eager and dependent apprentice, learns which parts of its raw, uncurated being are welcomed, and which must be hidden away. This is the genesis of the self as structure. It is a brilliant, adaptive mechanism. To be called the smart one is to be given a script. To be labeled the difficult one is to be cast in a role. The child internalizes these narratives, weaving them into a coherent identity. This identity becomes a map for navigating the complex terrain of family, school, and society. It answers the fundamental, terrifying question: who must I be in order to be loved, to be safe, to belong? The materials for this construction are endlessly available. A childhood trauma becomes a reinforced steel beam, a permanent part of the foundation, dictating that vulnerability is a structural weakness. A early triumph in sports or art becomes a showroom, a space to which one returns again and again for validation. Cultural expectations pour in like concrete, setting into rigid forms what success looks like, what a worthy life entails, how a man should behave, how a woman should feel. By the time one reaches adulthood, the structure is largely complete. It has a recognizable facade, a certain way of speaking, of carrying oneself, of reacting to stress or praise. From the outside, it may look impressive, a sturdy house with a well-kept garden, but from the inside, the occupant knows the truth. They know which floorboards creak under the weight of a secret. They know the rooms that are kept permanently locked, housing the emotions deemed too dangerous, the rage, the neediness, the wild creativity, the profound uncertainty. They live with the constant, low-grade hum of effort it takes to maintain the facade, to keep the lights on in every window, to pretend the entire edifice is not, in some places, slowly settling into unstable ground. Psychologists call this process self-concept development. It is the story we tell ourselves about ourselves, compiled from the stories others have told about us. It is a necessary fiction, a stabilizing force, but a fiction nonetheless. The problem is not the existence of the structure, but the gradual, unconscious belief that the structure is the entire landscape, that there is nothing beyond its walls. The soul, the true, wild, and unconstructed self, becomes the ghost in the machine, the quiet inhabitant of the cellar, the whisper in the attic. This identity is maintained through a continuous feedback loop with the world. People expect to see the person they have always known. They rely on the consistency of the character. When you begin to act out of character, even in small ways, the social system registers it as a glitch, a laugh that is too loud, an opinion that contradicts an old one. Moment of unexpected vulnerability. The reactions of others, their surprise, their discomfort, their correction, are like gentle hands guiding you back to the center of the stage you have always occupied. The architecture of the self is not a solitary creation, it is a collaborative project with everyone you have ever met. And so the self solidifies. It becomes a biography written in stone. You are the responsible one, the cheerful one, the cynic, the peacemaker. These are not just traits. They are contracts you have signed with your history. To break them feels not like freedom, but like a betrayal of a sacred promise. It feels like dismantling the very walls that have kept the weather out for a lifetime. The terrifying question arises: if I am not This structure, then what am I? If I take off this mask, will I find a face beneath it? Or simply the void? This is the profound dilemma of the first whisper. The longing to disappear is at this stage a longing to step outside the walls of a familiar prison, but the prison is also home. It is filled with the furniture of a lifetime. It holds all your trophies and your scars. To leave it feels like an act of self-annihilation, because for so long the structure has been who you are. To challenge it is to stare into the abyss of the question that has been waiting patiently in the foundations all along. Who built this, and who truly lives here? The decision is not made in a single dramatic moment. It is a slow, cumulative turning away. It is the final acceptance of a truth that has been circling for years. The fortress, for all its imposing strength, has become uninhabitable. The very walls that were meant to provide safety now block the light and stifle the air. And so, the most delicate and dangerous phase begins, not construction but deconstruction, not a battle but a surrender, the conscious, willing unraveling of the self you worked so hard to build. This is not an act of destruction for its own sake. It is an act of archaeology, to find what is original, what is true. One must first carefully remove what has been added on, layer by layer over a lifetime. It begins with a quiet refusal, a no spoken so softly it is almost inaudible, first only to oneself. No, I will not force a laugh today. No, I will not pretend that this achievement fulfills me. No, I will not hide this particular sadness for the comfort of others. Each refusal is a single thread pulled from the grand tapestry of the persona. At first it seems like nothing, but soon a pattern begins to loosen. What follows is a period of profound disorientation. If you are no longer the reliable one, then who are you when someone needs reliability? If you are no longer the cheerful one, what is the sound of your own authentic voice, unpolished and uncurated? This between space is what the mystics called the dark night of the soul. In psychological terms, it is a state of liminality, the threshold between one identity and the next. It is a foggy, featureless landscape. The old map is useless, and the new territory has not yet been charted. This phase is inherently lonely. The social feedback loop that once reinforced the old self now registers only static. People, even those with the best intentions, will try to pull you back into the familiar silhouette. You're not yourself, they say with concern, and they are right. That is the entire point. The self they knew is receding. To continue the unraveling, one must learn to tolerate their confusion and one's own. It requires a faith, not in a specific outcome, but in the process itself, a trust that the unraveling is not an end, but a necessary clearing. Emotionally, this can feel like a kind of death, and in a way it is. It is the death of a self concept, and like any death, it is accompanied by grief. There may be a strange mourning for the simple, uncomplicated days of the old identity, even if they were days of quiet desperation. There is grief for the relationships that were built on that former version of you, for they will inevitably change. There is fear, a trembling in the hands as they pull apart the very fabric of a life. The mind, in its love of order and predictability, will resist. The inner critic, the guardian of the old fortress, will become a frantic saboteur. It will scream of the dangers ahead. It will list every failure, every reason why this new, undefined being could never survive. It will try to shame you back into the safety of the known. This internal conflict is not a sign that you are doing it wrong. It is a sign that you are doing the real, deep work. Unraveling is not a peaceful meditation. It is a messy, chaotic, and often frightening demolition. Yet within this chaos there are moments of startling clarity. As the layers of performance fall away, a different kind of perception emerges. Colors may seem brighter, sounds sharper. It is as if the constant effort of maintaining the facade was a filter on reality, and now it has been removed. In the space left by the abandoned roles, a profound silence grows, and in that silence, for the first time in a long time, you can hear the faint, steady rhythm of your own heart, not the heart of the son, the mother, the professional, but the heart of the being that exists before and after all those titles. This is the great paradox of the unraveling. To become, you must first unbecome. To Find solid ground, you must be willing to spend a long time falling. It is the ultimate act of trust to believe that the core of you, the essence that has been buried under decades of adaptation, is not only still there but is vital and whole. The unraveling is not the end of the story, it is the violent, necessary, and ultimately beautiful clearing of the ground, making space for whatever is meant to grow next. As the old structure weakens, its guardian awakens. This is not a malevolent force, but a deeply programmed one, a ghost in the machine of the psyche, whose sole purpose has always been preservation. It is the internal architect of the fortress, and it watches the unraveling with a terror that is existential. To it, every loosened thread is not a liberation, but a catastrophic failure in the system's integrity. This ghost has many names: the ego, the inner critic, the superego. It is the cumulative voice of every rule you were ever taught, every warning you were ever given. It is the echo of a parent's fear, a teacher's disapproval, a society's judgment, all internalized into a single relentless narrator. For decades, its job was to keep you safe within the walls of your assigned identity. Now, its job is to stop the demolition at any cost. Its primary weapon is fear, not a simple fear of the unknown, but a sophisticated multi-pronged assault. It will project vivid, terrifying images of the future, a life of total isolation where your authenticity repels everyone you love, a landscape of failure where without the armor of your old ambitions you are exposed and worthless. It will whisper that this longing for transformation is not a spiritual calling, but a form of madness. Look at what you are throwing away, it will hiss, presenting a curated gallery of your past achievements, now rendered meaningless by your own hand. Is this not the life you worked for? Who are you to ask for more? Alongside fear comes its loyal lieutenant, guilt. The ghost is a master of relational accounting. It will compile a list of every person who will be betrayed by your transformation, the partner who fell in love with your cheerful mask, the parents who sacrificed for the successful child they thought they were raising, the friends who rely on you being the stable, predictable one. Your disappearance, it will argue, is not a personal act, it is an act of violence against those who have built their lives around the person you promised to be. This guilt is a powerful tether designed to pull you back from the threshold of the new and return you to your post. And then there is the seduction of the familiar. In the cold, featureless landscape of the in-between, the ghost will paint a warm, nostalgic picture of the past. It will remind you of the comfort of a well-worn routine, the ease of a predictable reaction, the solid ground of a defined role. It will make the prison feel like a home again, and the vast, terrifying freedom of the unknown feel like a freezing, endless wilderness. Just go back. It will coo, just for a day, you can always try this again later. It is a siren song of self-betrayal sung in your own voice. This internal conflict is the crucible of transformation. It is not a battle to be won through force, for the ghost is a part of you. To fight it is to fight yourself, a civil war that can only end in scorched earth. The work is not to slay the ghost, but to listen to it, to understand its fears are at their core a distorted form of love, a desperate, clumsy attempt to protect you from pain, from exile, from annihilation. One must learn to sit with this ghost, to hear its frantic warnings and respond not with defiance but with compassion. I hear you, you can tell it. I hear that you are afraid we will be alone. I hear that you are afraid we will fail. Thank you for trying to protect me. This dialogue is not about agreement, but about acknowledgement. It is about reclaiming the space between the stimulus of the fear and your response to it. In that space lies your freedom. The ghost speaks the language of the past because that is its only database. It has no information on the future. It cannot conceive of a safety that exists beyond the walls. Belonging that comes from authenticity rather than conformity. Its terror is the terror of the machine being asked to run a program for which it was never coded. The journey forward requires accepting this ghost as a passenger, not a pilot, to thank it for its service and then gently to take the controls. This is the most intimate and arduous part of the disappearance. The external world may Be quiet, but the internal world is a cacophony. Progress is not a straight line, it is two steps into the unknown, followed by a frantic, ghost-driven retreat back to the familiar. It is the constant, exhausting work of choosing the whisper of the soul over the scream of the conditioned self, but with each choice, however small, the ghost's power wanes. Just a little, its voice grows quieter, less frantic. It learns slowly that the world does not end when a wall comes down, that on the other side of its most terrifying prophecy, there is not a void but space, and in that space, for the first time, a new kind of life can begin to breathe. There is a moment, subtle and unheralded, when the balance shifts, the internal conflict does not cease, but its character changes. The energy once spent on maintaining the old walls or fighting the ghost that guards them begins to pool, unused, in a new center of gravity. The relentless noise of deconstruction gives way to a quiet, fertile silence. This is not an end, but a true beginning, the alchemy of becoming. This turning point is rarely dramatic. It is not a thunderclap of revelation, but a gradual dawning, like the first slow light of a winter morning. It is the realization that you have been standing in the empty space for long enough that it no longer feels empty. It feels clean, cleared, a blank page after the frantic scribbling of the old story has been erased. The fear is still present, but it has been joined by something else, a low, steady current of curiosity. What if? The question is no longer one of terrified speculation, but of genuine inquiry. This is the space where the self shifts from being a found object to a created one. For lifetime, identity was something you discovered you were, based on external appraisals and historical accidents. Now it becomes something you consciously build from the inside out. This is the essence of the alchemy, the transformation of base, inherited materials, the pain, the expectations, the old roles, not by rejecting them, but by transmuting them into the gold of wisdom and choice. The past is no longer a prison. It becomes the foundation. The process is slow, deliberate, like a potter centering clay on a wheel. It begins with small, almost imperceptible choices. A preference long suppressed is quietly acknowledged. A boundary once unthinkable is gently drawn. A no spoken not in rebellion but in deep self-respect. A yes offered not for approval but from genuine desire. These are the first new bricks. They are not laid according to an old blueprint, but are shaped by an emerging internal sense of rightness. Does this action feel congruent? Does this thought align with the value I have chosen for myself, not one I inherited? Neuroscience offers a lens for this transformation. The brain, with its remarkable neuroplasticity, begins to rewire itself. The well-trodden neural pathways that fired each time you performed your old role, the people pleaser, the achiever, the stoic, begin to fade from disuse. In their place, new, tentative pathways are forged, each conscious choice to act differently, to feel differently, to respond from this new, unproven center is like a scout cutting a trail through an unexplored forest. At first, the trail is faint and difficult to follow, but with repeated passage, it becomes a clear, reliable road. The mind, once a rigid record of the past, becomes a flexible instrument for navigating the present. This is not about finding your true self, as if it were a finished statue buried in the earth. That is a myth of the old paradigm. The alchemy of becoming understands that the self is a verb, not a noun. It is a process, a continuous act of creation. You are not uncovering a static, predetermined being. You are participating in its ongoing emergence. The goal is not to arrive at a new, fixed identity, but to become fluid, responsive, and authentic in each moment. It is to exchange the solid, heavy armor of the persona for the living, breathing, adaptable skin of the soul. There is a profound sense of authorship that arises from this space. The narrative of a life is no longer something that happened to you, but something you are actively writing, word by careful word. The old chapters are not erased, they are reframed. That childhood pain is no longer a wound that defines you, but the origin story of your profound empathy. That period of failure is not a mark of shame, but the necessary compost from which your resilience grew. The story is integrated, not ignored. It becomes part of the strength and texture of the new whole. This phase is characterized by a quiet, steady kind of courage. It is the courage to exist. Without a rigid definition, to answer the question, who are you, not with a list of titles and histories, but with a presence and energy, a simple, I am here, discovering that very thing. It is the courage to be a question mark in a world that prefers periods, and in that courageous, open-ended state, a transformation occurs that is deeper than any change of costume or circumstance. You have not just changed your life, you have changed your relationship to life itself. You have learned the most fundamental art, how to be. And so you arrive here, not at an end, but at a different kind of beginning. The great disappearance is complete. The old architecture, once so imposing, now exists only as a memory, a ghost town on a distant horizon. You have not been erased, you have been returned to yourself. The work now is not to build or to unravel, but simply to inhabit, to live in the antidote. This new landscape is not defined by its peaks and valleys, its dramatic achievements or failures. Its quality is one of openness, of spaciousness. The air is clearer here. There is room to breathe, to move, to simply be without the constant pressure to perform. The internal critic, the ghost in the machine, has not vanished, but it has been reassigned. It is no longer the director of the play, but a consultant whose advice you are free to accept or decline. Its voice is quieter, often just a background murmur, a familiar old song that no longer commands you to dance. Life in the antidote is lived in the present tense. The past is a library you can visit, not a chain that binds you. The future is a horizon you walk toward, not a destination you must anxiously race to reach. The profound shift is in the relationship to time itself. You are no longer a refugee from your past or a hostage to your future. You are here, now. And this present moment, in all its simple, unadorned reality, is enough. It is more than enough. It is everything. This does not mean a life free of challenge or pain. The full spectrum of human emotion remains. Grief still visits, fear still knocks at the door, but you meet these guests differently. You no longer see them as threats to your identity, as proof that you have failed at being happy or strong. You meet them as temporary weather, as states that will pass through the vast, open sky of your awareness. You can feel a profound sadness without becoming the sad person. You can experience fear without it defining you as cowardly. The emotions are felt fully and completely, but they are no longer the bricks and mortar of your selfhood. You are the sky, not the storm. Relationships transform in this new light. You no longer seek others to complete you, to validate you, or to play a role in the old script you have abandoned. You connect from a place of wholeness, not lack. This allows for a new kind of intimacy, one based on truth, not transaction. Some relationships, those built entirely on the scaffolding of your old persona, may naturally fall away. There is a gentle grief in this, but also a deep respect for the roles they played in the story that was. New connections will be drawn to the authenticity you now radiate, like moths to a quiet, steady flame. To live in the antidote is to embrace fluidity. The self is not a carved statue, but a river. It changes, it adapts, it flows. Some days it is swift and sure, other days it is slow and meandering. There's no longer a single, fixed answer to the question, who am I? The answer is a living, breathing process. I am what I am in this moment. It is a commitment to ongoing discovery, a willingness to be surprised by oneself. It is to wear the skin of your life with a comfortable, lived-in grace, knowing it will change with the season. This is the final, quiet revelation of transformation. The ultimate freedom is not found in a new name, a new place, or a new life. It is found in the liberation from the need to be anyone other than who you are right now. It is the courage to be visible in your own unique, imperfect, and authentic shape. The journey of disappearance was never about vanishing from the world. It was about vanishing from the cage you built inside it. It was about dissolving the walls so you could finally experience the boundless landscape that was there all along. You look at your own hands. They are the same hands, yet they feel different. They are no longer tools for building fortresses, but instruments for touching the world directly. You feel the sun on your skin, and it is simply the sun. You hear the sound of the rain, And it is simply the rain. There is no longer a filter, a story, a meaning you must desperately assigned to it all. The meaning is in the feeling, the purpose is in the presence. You have not found yourself, you have returned to the self that was always there, waiting patiently beneath the noise and the effort, the self that is not a thing to be achieved but a presence to be lived, and in this homecoming you understand the most beautiful paradox of all. The only way to truly appear, to be fully and completely seen, is to have the courage to first and completely disappear.